The next column after the column 1 is column 2. And if you look at the rates of duty in column 2, you will find them to be very high. And that is the original 1930 Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act rates of duty. And that reflects restrictive trade practices. If you look at history, you will find that the Depression fell soon after the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act went into effect. These barriers to imported products and trade in the world. Very few countries are under this at this time. The three that are currently listed are Cuba, North Korea, and Laos. But this is a tool that is used by the United States government. For instance, areas that were under the control of the Taliban, they at one time had the column 2 rates of duty. So this discourages countries from trading because of the rates of duty. If you think back in history, the Soviet Union was under the column 2 rates of duty until the wall fell and the Soviet Union moved towards a more democratic process, and this column 2 rate was removed and allowed them to go to column 1. And so basically speaking, the trade barriers associated with high rates of duty cause many problems. Looking at the 1930 Tariff Act, we had the Depression that followed that, restrictive trade practice, as well as world wars followed. World War II, some have attributed to the lack of trade and the economic hardships that existed with Germany and other countries that were not open to the trade system that we had in effect because of those barriers. Again, it is important to know that both for imports and exports, 10 digits are involved. The first 2 are chapter, the next 4 refer to the headings, 6 digits represent a subheading, 8 digits is where the United States places the duty rate, 10 digits are for statistical reporting. It is important to understand and really comprehend the organization of the tariff book. The headings are identified by 4 digits, and you will be looking at those headings again based upon your knowledge of your product against the terms of those headings. It is important to know the subheading, what they represent. That is a 6-digit number or further breakdown of the heading into a subheading. It is important to know what a chapter is in a tariff and also a section, because we are coming to the first rule of interpretation and the discussion of that rule. And by knowing that rule of interpretation and knowing it thoroughly, overall you should be able to classify 80% of the merchandise coming into the United States by that rule, plus or minus. Now, what is that rule? That rule says that the titles of sections, chapters, and subchapters are provided for ease of reference only. For legal purposes, classification shall be determined according to the terms of the headings and any relative section or chapter notes, and provided such headings or notes do not otherwise require, according to the following provisions. Now, this is the rule that you must know. Of course, you need to know all the rules, but this is the one that you will get the most out of as far as classifying a broad range of merchandise. Now, it is important to know that there are three elements in that rule. Make up that rule. And that is, first, the titles of the various sections, chapters, and subchapters are provided for ease of reference only. And we can look at some of the illustrations of that, such as section 15 reads articles of base metal, but does not cover appliances and machinery of section 16, or pistols of section 19, metal furniture of section 20. So we see the importance of the titles being a reference use only. And that is the way that general rule of interpretation reads. If you look at it closely, the titles of section chapters and subchapters are provided for ease of reference only. That only helps you to find areas of the tariff that might pertain to your product. It doesn't mean that that is the method that you're going to use to classify. Then the second point of this general rule of interpretation, and bear in mind, these rules are found right behind the table of contents and the harmonized tariff schedule that you need a copy of. You should have a copy of this book. If you're importing and exporting, you can use that book for both purposes. But the second point of this rule is, for legal purposes, I emphasize for legal purposes, classification shall be determined according to the terms of the headings and any relative section or chapter notes. So they're telling you there that this is the key to the classification, in that it is legal and it is determined according to the terms of the headings. Remember, I have told you that you need to know what your merchandise is, and you need reference materials, information that helps you understand what that item is comprised of, material-wise or whatever. You need to know what the product is so that you can associate it with those headings and fit it into the heading and read the terms of the headings. And then you must look, always look at the section and chapter notes associated with the heading that you're trying to classify your merchandise into. Now, this is the most important part of General Rule of Interpretation. Number one, you must find the proper heading, and then if you think you have that heading and that it is proper, you must read the section and chapter notes. Too often, people in the process will find a heading and say that's where it falls and not read the section and chapter notes, and that is where you go astray. You have to read the section and chapter notes.